It's a good bounce back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end, and so that was that was by design for us to get back to
the
our
kind of story people whisper about, the kind that gets buried under polished statements and media spin, until one moment blows it wide open. And that moment came when Cheryl Reeves stopped playing along. No cliches, no safe answers. She looked forward and said exactly what she meant. And just like that, the rivalry everyone danced around became undeniable, something real, something you feel. But to understand why it hit like that, you have to rewind. Because this didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building slowly, quietly, tension stacking game after game, moment after moment, until something finally snapped. If you were watching closely, you saw it coming. The rise of Caitlin Clark changed everything. She wasn't just great. She became must-watch television, record-breaking, history-shifting, pulling fans into the game in numbers no one expected. Empty arenas turned electric. Ratings surged. She didn't just play. She moved the entire culture forward. But that kind of spotlight comes with pressure. When one player becomes a face of something bigger, everyone else has to decide where they stand around it. Some embraced it. Others didn't. Then there's Angel Reese, a force built differently. Her path through LSU, through a national title, through that iconic moment pointing to her ring finger. It wasn't just confidence. It was a statement. That image spread everywhere, bold, divisive, unforgettable. Reese built her own lane, her own audience, her own identity. And suddenly, women's basketball didn't have just one headline star. It had two. Same draft class, same rookie year, same spotlight. And when two powerful forces orbit the same space, friction isn't optional. It's inevitable. Then came the 2024 Paris Olympics selection process, where everything got complicated. Clark, despite everything she had done, was left off Team USA. Fans were stunned. Debates exploded. USA basketball pointed to experience and depth, but critics weren't buying it. They called it politics. They called it personal. Social media fractured overnight. Meanwhile, Reese was also left off, but the reaction? Quieter, less chaos. And that contrast spoke volumes. It revealed exactly how much weight Clark carried, and how differently each of these stars was being viewed as the pressure kept rising. When Caitlin Clark finally started getting her chances and kept delivering, the story didn't calm down. It got more complicated. Veterans who had spent years grinding with less money, less coverage, and barely any spotlight suddenly had to watch a rookie become the center of the entire conversation overnight. And some of them didn't hide how they felt. You could see it on the court. Hard fouls, tense moments, physical battles that kept getting replayed and argued about across social media. Every move Clark made was analyzed. Every clash, especially with Angel Reese, was broken down frame by frame. Was it just elite competition, or was it personal? That line kept getting thinner, and no one could agree where it truly was. Then came the pressure cooker, 2024 Paris Olympics prep camps. This is where everything collided. These camps are intense. Roster spots on the line, egos clashing, coaches trying to manage personalities while the entire world watches. Put Clark and Reese in that same space, carrying everything that had already built up around them. And it was like striking a match in a room full of fuel. And eventually, something ignited, according to reports, and what Cheryl Reeve later confirmed. Practices got heated. The edge that made both players great didn't disappear under the same jersey. If anything, it got sharper, because now the battle wasn't just external. It was internal. And that kind of pressure is almost impossible to contain. When Reeve finally addressed it, there was no theatrics, no grand reveal, just honesty. Asked directly. She didn't hide behind safe language. She admitted there was real tension, real conflict, something beyond normal competitiveness. What people had been whispering about wasn't just speculation, it was real. And then came the word that set everything off. They actually fought, not metaphorically, not just competed hard. Actually fought. That single confirmation sent shockwaves everywhere. Now, in a practice setting, fought can mean a lot. Maybe a shove, maybe words that escalated, maybe a moment that had to be broken up before it went too far. But it definitely wasn't nothing. And when a coach with Reeves' experience chooses that word, she knows exactly what it means and what it will do. The reaction split instantly. Clark supporters saw validation, proof that the hostility they'd been pointing out was real. They pointed to the fouls, the tension, the moments that fell off. Reese supporters pushed back just as hard. They saw a narrative forming that painted their player as a villain when she was simply competing the way she always had. They argued that fire gets celebrated in men's sports but criticized here, and that the framing was unfair from the start. What almost no one wanted to accept was the uncomfortable middle ground, that both things could be true at the same time. Clark could have faced real hostility, and some of that tension could have been a reaction to how her rise was framed. Reese could have been part of that friction, not as a villain, but as a competitor refusing to step aside. And maybe that friction wasn't fueled by anything personal at all. Maybe it was just pure, raw competition reaching a boiling point. But here's the problem. Sports media, and especially social media, doesn't handle complexity well. It doesn't want gray areas. It wants heroes and villains, a clean narrative you can pick a side in, and the reality between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese refused to fit that mold. That's exactly why it never went away. To really understand this moment, you have to zoom out. For years, women's basketball in the U.S. survived on passion, not spotlight. The players who built the WNBA did it without the money, the packed arenas, or the constant media attention. Then everything changed fast. Nil deals, social media, and a new generation of stars reshaped the game overnight. And Clark became the spark that accelerated it all. That kind of rapid change creates pressure, and eventually, pressure has to release. What happened during USA basketball practice wasn't shocking. It was inevitable. After Cheryl Reeve confirmed it, the only question left was, what happens next? The truth is, this kind of thing happens all the time in sports. Great players clash. It's part of what makes them great. Rivalries that start with tension often evolve into respect. But what makes this different isn't just a moment. It's everything surrounding it. The fan bases are massive, loud, and relentless. Every glance, every interaction between Clark and Reese gets turned into content, into controversy, into fuel for never-ending narrative. Even if they move on, the story won't. That moment, the fight, becomes permanent. It gets replayed, reanalyzed, brought back every time they share court. And when someone like Reeves says it out loud, she knows exactly what she's doing. Maybe she wanted to control the story before it leaked. Maybe she was frustrated with how oversimplified everything had become. Because managing elite athletes, massive egos, and global attention isn't simple. It's chaos behind the scenes. And now that chaos is public. There's a version of the story where everything works out, where Clark and Reese grow, win, dominate the league, and one day look back at this as a fire that forged them. But that future depends on something rare, patience, growth, and space for the story to evolve. Right now, that feels unlikely. The internet doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive complexity. What gets lost in all of this is them. Two young players in their early 20s carrying pressure most athletes never face this early. Every move analyzed, every word amplified. The fact that something boiled over isn't surprising. Honestly, what's surprising is that it doesn't happen more often. And despite everything, both have continued to perform, to compete, to carry the weight. That says more than the conflict ever could. But now, the legacy of this moment is unwritten. If they rise together, this becomes a footnote. If things fracture further, it becomes something darker, a turning point where momentum turned into division. The sport is at a crossroads, and they're standing right in the middle of it. Cheryl Reeve didn't create the story. She confirmed it. And confirmation changes everything, because now it's real. Two of the biggest stars in women's basketball didn't just compete, they clashed. And whether people like it or not, the fallout from that moment isn't going anywhere. One thing is certain, you're going to keep watching, because this is the kind of story you can't look away from.